Don't look at that chair by the window. Every time I walk into this kitchen, I see it, and I have to remind myself she's not sitting there anymore. Not because she's gone, because she almost was. I need to tell you what happened to my family. Not because I want to, but because somebody out there is sitting in a house right now watching someone they love get sicker and sicker, and the doctors can't figure out why. And I need that person to hear this. My name is not important. What matters is that I am 63 years old, a retired postal worker from Columbus, Ohio, and 14 months ago my wife of 38 years was dying in a hospital bed while I sat next to her holding her hand and praying to God for an answer. An answer that, it turned out, had been sleeping in the guest room down the hall from us for 11 months. Let me take you back to where this started. My wife. I'll call her my sweetheart because that's what she is. She grew up in Dayton, youngest of 4 kids. Her daddy worked the line at GM, her mama cleaned houses on the east side. She put herself through 2 years of community college, then worked as a medical billing specialist for 22 years at the same clinic downtown. Dependable. Careful. The kind of woman who kept a running list of every bill, every due date, every dollar in and every dollar out in a spiral notebook on the kitchen counter. You don't meet women like her anymore. I know I don't deserve her. I've known that since our second date in 1987 when she ordered the steak and told me I shouldn't slouch. We raised 2 children in this house. Our son is in Atlanta now, works in logistics. Our daughter lives about 40 minutes from us, married with 2 kids. We are close with both of them. Sunday dinners, holidays, birthday parties in the backyard. The kind of family you think is protected just because you built it with love. I retired in 2019. My wife planned to retire the following year. We had talked about Florida. Not permanently, just winters. We had money saved. Not rich, but careful. 38 years of careful. The trouble started with my wife's nephew, her older sister's boy. I'll call him by his role. He was her nephew, 29 years old, and he had been living in Phoenix working in solar installation. Good money when the work was steady. Trouble was, the work stopped being steady. He called my wife in March 2 years ago, said he'd gotten laid off, lost his apartment, was sleeping on a coworker's couch. Could he come stay with us for a little while? Just until he found something? My wife didn't even ask me first. She said yes before she hung up the phone, then looked at me with those eyes that mean the decision is already made. I said fine. He could stay in the guest room. 3 months, maybe 4. He arrived with 2 duffel bags and a backpack and a smile that reminded me of a car salesman who already knows you can't afford the car. I don't know why I felt that. I told myself I was being unfair to the boy. He'd had hard luck. That happens to people. You don't abandon family over bad luck. The first few weeks were easy enough. He helped around the house, took out the trash without being asked, offered to drive my wife to her appointments. She has a bad knee from a fall she took in 2018, so driving can be uncomfortable for her on long trips. He was attentive in a way that seemed like good manners. I told myself I'd been wrong about him. He got a part-time job at a hardware store about 6 weeks in. Nothing great, but something. He seemed in decent spirits. He ate dinner with us most nights. He talked a lot about plans, about getting his commercial driver's license, about maybe going back to school online, about a business idea involving pressure washing. Plans have a way of staying plans. I noticed that, but said nothing. Around month 3, my wife started not feeling well. It was small things at first. Fatigue. She'd always been energetic, up at 6, busy all morning. Now she was sleeping until 8:30, sometimes 9. She said her legs felt heavy. She chalked it up to the weather, to getting older, to the bad knee acting up again. I chalked it up to the same things. Then her hair started thinning. That scared her. She has always taken care of her hair. Every 2 weeks at the salon, same stylist for 11 years. When she came home from an appointment in June and showed me what was coming out in the brush, her eyes were wet. I told her we'd go to the doctor. She said she'd already called. The doctor ran blood work, said her iron was low, prescribed supplements. We thought that was it. She started taking the supplements. She didn't get better. By August, she was having trouble with her memory. Small things. She forgot to pay the electric bill, which she had never once forgotten in 30 years of managing this household. She forgot her sister's birthday. She put the kettle on and walked away and didn't remember until the smoke alarm went off. I started to get frightened in a way I hadn't let myself get frightened before. Something was wrong. Not aging wrong. Something else wrong. We went back to the doctor. More blood work. Her kidney function was slightly off. The doctor referred us to a nephrologist. The nephrologist referred us to a neurologist. Each appointment was 3-4 weeks away. Meanwhile, my wife sat in that chair by the kitchen window looking out at the backyard, and I could see she was working hard just to stay present. I'd catch her touching her own hair, just resting her hand there, like she was checking to make sure it was still there. The whole time, her nephew was in the guest room. He had extended his stay without really asking. It happened gradually. First, it was another month. Then the job situation needed to stabilize, then he was saving for a deposit. I didn't push it. My wife didn't want me to push it. She said he was helping out, and she was right that he was doing more around the house as she got sicker. He did the grocery runs. He cooked twice a week. He drove her to appointments when I had my own doctor's visits. I have a bad back. A few appointments I couldn't miss. It seemed like he was doing the right thing. Looking back, I want to put my fist through a wall. In September, my wife had a bad fall getting out of the shower. I heard the sound from the other room and I will never forget it. I got to her and she was conscious but confused, and her left leg wasn't working right. I called 911. They took her to Riverside Methodist. She spent 4 days there. The initial concern was a stroke, but the scans didn't confirm that. They stabilized her, did more testing, and sent us home with new medications and a follow-up schedule. No clear diagnosis. "We're still looking," the attending physician told me. Those words aged me 5 years. 2 weeks after she came home, she went back. Worse this time. Nausea so severe she couldn't keep water down, her hands trembling. Confusion worse than before. This is when everything changed. I was at the hospital, maybe 10 o'clock at night, sitting in the hallway outside her room because I needed 2 minutes away from the beeping machines and the smell of that place. Just sitting on one of those plastic chairs with my elbows on my knees and my head down. I wasn't praying exactly. I was just talking to God in the way you do when you've run out of words but you can't stop making noise. A woman sat down next to me. She was the charge nurse on my wife's floor. I had seen her a few times over the past 2 days. Filipino woman, maybe late 40s, very calm eyes. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said quietly, almost like she was talking to herself, "Mr. Harmon, I need to ask you something, and I need you to understand that I'm asking because I'm concerned, not to alarm you." I looked at her. She said, "Does anyone besides you give your wife food or drink at home? Regularly? Someone who has regular access to your kitchen?" I didn't understand the question at first. I told her yes. My wife's nephew was staying with us. He helped with groceries and cooking sometimes. She nodded slowly. She said, "I want you to talk to the attending physician in the morning. Tell them exactly what you told me and ask them specifically about thallium toxicity testing. Will you do that?" I said. "What are you saying to me?" She said, "I'm not saying anything officially. I'm a nurse. But I've been doing this for 21 years, and your wife's symptom profile, the hair loss, the neurological symptoms, the GI issues, the pattern of it. I've seen a version of this once before. Once is enough to make me say something to you in a hallway." I sat there for a long time after she walked away. I am not going to tell you what I thought about in those minutes, because some of it I'm not proud of. I went from disbelief to fury to cold, specific clarity in a way that scared me more than the anger did. The next morning, I asked to speak with the attending physician before rounds. I told him exactly what the nurse had suggested. He was measured about it, careful not to commit, but he said the symptom presentation was worth ruling out, and he ordered a blood test specifically for heavy metal toxicity, including thallium. The results came back 36 hours later. Thallium. In my wife's bloodstream. Not a trace amount. enough to be causing everything we had watched her suffer through for 6 months. I was sitting in a small consultation room when the doctor told me. He said they would be contacting the hospital's patient advocacy team and likely law enforcement. I heard him. I understood him. But for a moment, all I could think about was my wife in that bed, and her notebook on the kitchen counter with all the bills listed out, and the chair by the window, and 38 years. Then I thought about who had been running the grocery trips. I called my daughter before I called the police. I needed 5 minutes to be a father before I became whatever I was about to become. She cried. I told her not to come to the hospital yet. I needed to think. A detective from Columbus PD, I'll call him Detective Cole, came to the hospital that afternoon. Heavy-set man, 60s, the kind of quiet that makes you want to fill the silence just to test yourself. He listened to everything I said without writing anything down. Then he asked me about the guest room, about access to the kitchen, about when my wife's nephew was typically home. Detective Cole asked me to do something that went against every instinct I had. He asked me not to go home. Not yet. He asked me to stay at the hospital, to behave as I normally would when talking to my wife's nephew by phone, to not give any indication that anything had changed. I called the nephew that evening from the hospital. He answered on the second ring, asked how my wife was doing. Sounded appropriately concerned. I told him she was stable, that I'd probably be at the hospital through the night, that he should help himself to whatever was in the refrigerator. He said, of course, not to worry, to take care of her. I have never wanted to be wrong about something so badly in my life. What I didn't know until later, while I was making that call, Detective Cole had obtained an emergency court order and a forensics team was already at my house. They were in the kitchen. They were in the guest room. They were very thorough and very quiet. What they found in the guest room, in a shoebox on the top shelf of the closet behind some folded sweatshirts, was a small container. The lab later confirmed it contained thallium sulfate. They also found a receipt, printed, not handwritten, from a chemical supply website. And they found a notebook of his own, not a bill notebook, a notebook with dates in it, and amounts, and a timeline that the prosecutor later described in court as a dosing schedule. My wife's nephew had taken out a life insurance policy on her 8 months earlier. She had signed the paperwork. She told investigators later she thought she was signing something related to updating her own existing policy. He had told her it was a routine update her insurance company had sent, that he'd already called and confirmed it. She trusted him. He was her sister's boy. She had held him at the hospital the day he was born. The policy was for $400,000. He was the secondary beneficiary, structured to trigger in the event of her death with no surviving primary. He had done his homework. That was the thing that kept coming back to me through all of it. He had done his research. This was not a moment of desperation or rage. This was planned, over months, in my house, under my roof. While I passed him in the hallway every morning and said good morning and meant it, he was arrested at my house at 7 a.m. the next day. I was not there. I was with my wife. She was awake, and the doctors had started her on treatment for the thallium poisoning, a process called Prussian blue therapy, which helps the body eliminate thallium. It takes time. She would be in the hospital for another 3 weeks. My son flew in from Atlanta the day we told the family. That was one of the hardest conversations I have had in my life, telling my wife what had been done to her. Who had done it? She didn't cry right away. She just got very still. She looked at the ceiling for a long time. Then she said, "How long?" I told her. She closed her eyes. Her sister, the nephew's mother, called me twice. I did not answer. I don't know what I would have said. I don't know what I would have said. I don't blame her. She didn't know. I believe that completely. But I needed time before I could have that conversation, and I still needed more time the second time she called. The case went to trial. He was charged with attempted murder and elder financial abuse. He pled not guilty. It took 3 days. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on both counts. He is currently serving 22 years in an Ohio State correctional facility. He will be 51 when he's eligible for parole. My wife came home in November. She walks with a cane now, which she hates. She's stubborn about that, always has been. Her hair is growing back. She is back to her notebook on the counter, back to her lists, back to knowing every bill and every due date. The memory issues have largely resolved. The doctors say her kidneys are functioning within normal range. Some mornings, she sits in that chair by the window with her coffee and watches the birds at the feeder we put up last spring, and I stand in the kitchen doorway and watch her. And I have to tell you, I don't have words for what that looks like to me. 38 years and I still don't have the words. But I'm not done yet. Because I need to talk to you directly for a minute. If you are watching this and something in your gut is telling you that a person in your home isn't right, please listen to that. I'm not saying everyone is capable of what that young man did. I am saying I dismissed every instinct I had for almost a year because I didn't want to be the suspicious old man who couldn't trust his own wife's family. I talked myself out of every hesitation. Every time something felt off, I found a reason to explain it away. The smile that was a little too easy. The helpfulness that was a little too well-timed. The way he always seemed to be in the kitchen when I wasn't. Do not talk yourself out of what you feel. If your loved one is getting sicker in ways that doctors can't explain, ask questions. Ask specifically. Push. My wife's chart showed elevated thallium levels that would have been caught sooner if I had known to ask about heavy metal toxicity in month 3 instead of month 8. That is on me. I didn't know what I didn't know. But now you know. So ask. And be careful. I'm going to say it plainly. Be careful who you let have regular access to your food, your kitchen, your refrigerator, the things you consume every day without thinking. I know that sounds paranoid. I know it sounds like something you'd hear from someone who lost the plot. But here I am, standing in my kitchen in Columbus, Ohio, telling you that my wife is alive because a night shift charge nurse trusted her gut enough to sit down next to a tired old man in a hospital hallway and say something quiet and important. One person. One moment. That was the difference. She knows who she is. I have not been able to find the words to thank her properly yet. I am working on it. To everyone watching this, I see your comments. I see where you're tuning in from. And I want you to know that this story belongs to all of you in a way now too, because you carrying it forward is what makes the telling worth something. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. You might not know who that is, but they're out there. Take care of your people. Pay attention. Trust the still small voice. And if you're new here, welcome to the channel. I'm Uncle Frederick, and I never thought I'd be the one telling a story like this, but here we are. God bless you. I've had a lot of time to sit with this, more than I wanted, and the thing that keeps coming back to me isn't the anger, though the anger was there, deep and long. It's the question of how something like this is even possible, how a person gets to a place where they can sit across a dinner table from a woman who loved them, who opened her home to them, and do what he did. Night after night, month after month. I don't have a clean answer. But I've thought about it enough to say this. What he did didn't start with the thallium. It started long before that, in small decisions. In the choice to see my wife not as a person, but as a means to something. In the choice to let need become entitlement, and entitlement become something colder. Nobody wakes up one morning and does what he did. They get there in steps, and every step is a choice. That's the part that matters to me now. Not that he was some kind of monster born that way, but that he chose, repeatedly, over months, to keep going. There's a kind of clarity in that, even if it's a painful one. And I think about my wife. What she endured without knowing she was enduring it. She just thought she was getting old too fast. Getting sick in ways that didn't make sense. She kept apologizing, to me, to the doctors, as if her body failing her was somehow her fault. That's the kind of woman she is. She has spent her whole life being responsible, being reliable, being the one who holds things together. And someone who should have honored that used it against her. The trust she extended to him because of who she is, that's what he exploited. Her goodness was the weapon he used on her. That's not something I will ever stop being angry about. But I've also learned that anger, held on to too long, starts doing to you what you're angry about someone else doing. It takes something from you quietly, over time. I'm not interested in that. I have a wife sitting in a chair by the kitchen window watching birds. I have a son who flew in from Atlanta the minute I called. I have a daughter 40 minutes away who still checks in every single day. I'm not going to let what he did steal another minute from what I still have. What I want people to take from this, if there's anything to take, is that paying attention is not the same as being suspicious. Caring about your family is not paranoia. Asking hard questions when something doesn't add up is not being difficult. I waited too long because I didn't want to be the kind of man who looks sideways at his own family. I wanted to be generous. I wanted to be fair. And those are good instincts, but generosity without discernment is just exposure. You can be a good person and still protect yourself. Those two things are not in conflict. The charge nurse who sat down next to me in that hallway, she paid attention. She trusted what she knew after 21 years of watching patients. She said something when it would have been easier to say nothing. That one act of courage, that one quiet moment, is the reason my wife is here. I think about what kind of person chooses to do that, what it costs to speak up when you're not sure, when you could be wrong, when it's not your job to say it. That's character. That's what it looks like in practice. Not grand, not dramatic. Just a person sitting down next to a tired stranger and saying the hard thing gently. I want to be more like her. I think that's the only right response I have.